window open somewhere here that I'm gonna have to close. That has my audio playing back to me. Or it should be working this time. Alright. I'm also going to unmute myself on Discord. Okay. Alright, so, thank you all for coming. We're going to be covering character design today. I'm going to go over some of the things that we're going to be studying from today. One of them is the movie Klaus and the character designs from Klaus. There's a lot of really cool stuff with Klaus to dig into, but this particular little featurette trailer right here on how they, on the technique they used to go from like kind of flat color shading character animation to this very very painterly integrated in the background style of lighting for the film, which they had AI assistants with that was them tweaked by human artists. This film has really excellent character design in it, and so we're going to be doing some draw-over studies of their model sheets, and I'll give you a little taste of that. A bunch of stuff here available worth digging through on the Klaus. This I think this is the official site of the character designer that designed these. I'll link that in chat. Let me see. So I'll link that in chat, and there's the stuff that we're going to really pay attention to, especially, will be sheets like this with this character turnaround that shows how many heads high that character is and how he looks turned fully around, also different poses and stuff, and sheets like this where it shows a lineup of a bunch of different like secondary background characters and stuff. Sheets like this that really show off a lot of like interesting kind of key poses for this character. Sheets like this that actually show you a little bit of what they gave the animators as guides for how to draw this character, like little guidelines and stuff. Head not too square, closed mouth, and so on. Let's see here if I can close that. It's not letting me close that. Cool. Get that out of the way. And this one in particular, because this one is especially descriptive. And this one shows like the differences between an off-model version of the character and an on-model character. Shows a approach to simplifying how the shapes of the character fit together and so on. And a full turnaround of him showing how many heads tall he is. There's also a couple other things I want to point out that we see little snippets of in this. Like, here, let me see here. So there's different phases that the animation goes through. This is like more kind of cleaned up right here. This is not necessarily the final line, but this is like really super cleaned up where they hand it over to ink and paint. I think that's the ink. That's the final inks right there. And then there's the flats. And then there's the lighting. And that's a 3D model integrated in with this, but the 3D model was actually painted with the same 2D technique that the other stuff was too, even though it was a 3D model. But one of the things I wanted to maybe find right here, like some of the rough animation that they did, there's a couple clips in this that show a little bit of that. And I just want to give like a little taste of like just how, this is storyboards right here, but
Okay.
in this thing, like in this at certain points in this thing, there's extremely like super rough animation passes on the characters, and that's like the early phase stuff that the animators do when they're trying to work out the motion without like going super detailed with the characters. It's like getting a little taste of that might be cool if we can find a clip in here. There was like at least 3 points in this where I think where they did some of that. But anyway, it's gonna be hard. I can't find it in the thumbnail, so you'll have to dig through that yourself. But anyway, the other guy I wanted to give a plug to Brooks Eggleston, which is a really cool character design focused YouTube channel. And this guy also is a good rabbit hole to go down, in that there's a lot of other artists that he interacts with through his channel and talks about their approaches, and you can check them out too. But he draws really fun, very cartoony art that I like a lot. And I want to dig way more into him. He actually has a character design course I'm thinking of checking out that you have to pay money for, but I might buy that if I can budget for it. The other thing I've been looking at today, partly as inspiration, is Devon Katie Lee, who has an art station. And they are one of the people that worked on, one of the main people actually, who worked on the Spyro Reignited trilogy. There's a lot of really amazing artists that worked on that. There's only a small taste of what they did for that on their art station. I want to see if I can get a hold of like the Spyro art book or something, so that I don't have to dig through Pinterest looking for Spyro Reignited art, because there's an amazing amount of artistry that went into the Reignited trilogy. It brought the games to life in a very modernized way, and they used amazing like illustration art pieces like this to kind of tell more stories about the characters than there even was in the original game. And that of course added texture to the good thing I didn't go further in that, because there's mature content there. Can't show that on stream. Oh yeah, this person also worked on the ill-fated Gigantic, which had some amazing designs in it, but sadly that game didn't pan out. Yeah, they have a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, I checked. I'm gonna link them in chat too. Oh, someone already did for me. So yeah, I'm like super crummy compared to like both of these, well, all of these people, but I mean the reason why I'm teaching these classes is because I'm basically like forcing myself to practice regularly. So this is like kind of what I'm going to be going over today is kind of like first steps in the right direction of like trying to apply a lot of the stuff that they go over. I've taken character design classes before, but I'm not a very polished draftsman or designer, and I want to push more in the direction of polishing and finishing animatable characters and stuff. So these are 4 characters I came up with before the class that I'm going to be developing more over the course of this class, in addition to the drawing demonstration, in addition to the drawovers on the class model sheets, and maybe some drawovers on some of Devon Katie Lee's Spyro work, because I want to absorb bits and pieces from that. So these are 4 characters I came up with. It's Kobold brother and sister, a friendly young wizard, and the friendly young wizard's kind of, I don't really know quite. They're sort of like a familiar, but I don't really. I think I like the idea better that they are just another friend of the wizard character, who just happens to be like a sentient bird species. So I was gonna put like clothes on them and stuff. So So I'm kind of developing them and figuring them out. Like, I like the idea of this character being kind of a Shaggy from Scooby-Doo-ish sort of thing, with him being a bit of a coward, but I want him to have like redeemable qualities, like a lot of like good redeemable qualities to him. Like, he's a coward, but like when you push him to the edge, it's kind of like a like backing an animal into a corner, or like when his friends are really in trouble. Like, he's worried all the time. Like, his cowardice is because he's worried. Well, he's worried about getting hurt himself, but he's mainly worried about his friends getting hurt. So he's worried about them getting harmed. So when there's no other options for him and his friends to escape danger, he basically hulks out, more or less. And I want him to like actually be like, because he like, I like the idea of like someone who is not really a fighter by nature, but when they're pushed to the brink, they fight back harder than anyone else. I like that kind of idea with that character. And so this is his sister. She's not an idiot. She's as opposed to like, kind of like a sensible one and the stupid one or something like that. She's not an idiot. She's like a friendly, kind of fun-loving character who's like inquisitive and friendly to others. She's less cautious than her brother. She gets along a little bit better with the wizard character, and they kind of have a kindred spirit thing going on with them a little bit. So she's a really fun and joyful character. She's like her personality is kind of modeled after like art school girls I've known over the years. The wizard character is actually modeled more after like art school guys I've known over the years, or actually art school girls too, for that matter. I mean, both of these characters could be guys or girls for their personalities. For the kinds of people I've encountered in art school, they're fun. They're like boys and girl characters that embody these personality traits I've known as artists over the years. But that's mainly what I'm drawing from so far for these. Like, these characters, these two characters are very much driven by artists I've known. This guy is more driven by that kind of dynamic I was going for, and I like the idea of taking the coward trope and making a character who's still, he's not one-dimensional, and he's got appeal and heart to him beyond that. So I'm going to maybe explore some ideas with him that show different sides to him. So the wizard character, I like the idea of him kind of being like a young inquisitive Gandalf, sort of. He's maybe like into rock music, prog rock or something kind of personality. He's very like kind of open-minded. He's accepting of other people. He's he likes being exploratory and inquisitive, just sort of like the sister kobold character. And he's got this kind of like this friend companion who's this sentient bird creature who's also very highly intelligent. Who she the direction I'm kind of going with her right now is there's a little bit of Kazooie from Banjo-Kazooie in her, where she might be the one who's most apt to antagonize this guy and like maybe spook him or just irritate him or just kind of fuck with him. Or taunt him a little bit. And the four of them, I haven't really thought of any kind of adventures, but the four of them would want to hang out with each other and just enjoy each other's company. I think that this guy, he would be at ease when they're just hanging out. Like, he might have like he might have kind of like a social anxiety thing going on, but he wouldn't be terrified all the time. When they're just like kind of hanging out in a setting where he doesn't have to be worried about being ambushed or something like that, he'd probably be more chilled out. I do like the idea that he's encountered danger before, so he's kind of traumatized, so he might have some kind of a PTSD thing going on. I was experimenting with ideas of like maybe parts of his tail might be kind of mangled or chopped off, like he's encountered bad things. He's seen some shit, kind of. So he has good reason to be kind of traumatized or whatever. But I don't know where I'm going with these guys just yet. And that's part of the fun of this. Like, I literally created these characters before class, just kind of exploring with them and stuff. So I'm sort of like using there's different rules of character design you can use to kind of figure out what characters are. One is like the rule of twos, where like you get two characters that are the total opposite of each other. Like, and I used the most common one because I actually started with just these two. Like, do a tall one and a tall one and a short one, tall skinny one and short wide one. But rule twos is kind of good for like a binary duo, I guess, but it can be a little limiting. So you can also get into rule threes, where like where it's like almost kind of like a triad of different colors on a primary spectrum, so to speak, in terms of like what the characters would evoke. And you can think of them that way. Like, this character is very fiery and ragey and stuff. This character is very calm and relaxed and open. This character is a little bit more kind of like a rogue. He's kind of like sneaky and calculating or something. And then like you can kind of blur their relationships between each other a little bit, like when they like how they relate to each other and how they might influence each other and stuff on this kind of spectrum. And you might even think about like what happens when their dynamics combine or something. Like, how does it shape how they interact with each other, or how they team up in like a team scenario or something, or how does the dysfunction break their relationships apart. But there's another rule you can use called the rule of fours, and that's what I'm experimenting with right now. The rule of fours, you usually start with a central character, who's like the central defining character, and then you create at least three other characters that are sort of defined by them. So you do wind up with some more of a kind of a central character. Like, let's make me think this little guy our central character. Off-kilter, box-headed kid, kind of. These sort of little weird, ghostly, quick doodles around him. This is like a kind of an examination of that sort of idea. Like, these kind of characters are sort of loosely thought of in relation to this main guy. And that's sort of what I'm experimenting with this. Even though I did start with the duo character thing, I'm sort of trying to figure out, like, who's kind of the central character. I'm sort of feeling it like it can shift with these four, depending on depending on where the focus of the story is. But most of the story would be, this guy would be the closest thing to a main character, but he is actually mostly an observer character. This gal would probably be a little closer to a main character than him. But honestly, I think that this guy so far would probably be the main driving character, because he is someone who reacts to the world and how the world and how bizarre the world. He's kind of like hyper aware of the world. So making him and the story that is the stories that are told center more around him and his perspective, and sympathies sympathies in the story lie with this character would probably be the best way to go about it. Like he's not a side character. His personal growth story about being more than just a coward might be the central point of interest. And it would also give me something to play off of, like, what would terrify him? Like, what horrible scenarios happening to these friends who are appealing and fun, and these are characters that I would like to hang out with if I came to this adventure world or whatever. Like, this guy is worried about them getting hurt. And he's aware of he wants to be aware of the danger that's going to hurt them. So that also means that monsters or villains or situations that they find themselves in would be kind of defined by his perspective to an extent. So I would probably maybe think of like what would scare him the most, and what would specifically kind of like really freak him out, or how would I leverage like the world itself almost seemingly against him, and sort of punishing him to an extent for caring about his friends. So we'll get into model sheets and stuff, but I kind of want to just do this little thing real quick. So I'm thinking like, kind of looks like Yoshi. I'm just kind of doing like a little thumbnail sketch of like the general mood I would go with him. I like the idea of like stuff that is scary is got its in this world that seems to have like its lasers focused on like fucking with him specifically a lot of the times. And I like the idea of like stuff that kind of like fucks him up and freaks him out, like his friends stepping in to help him could be part of their dynamic to an extent. Like, and one of the things I would definitely want to avoid with this character is I want to avoid making him a boring coward that's just like irritating to have around, because that's always a danger. I kind of like the idea of, okay, when is this character going to go, like, I kind of like the idea of making him more like a Popeye character in that way. Like, when is this character going to get set off and fuck up the bad guys or something, you know? Making some kind of a undead ghostly entity here that's kind of fucking with him. This is really, really frighteningly large and long eyes that I'm kind of stealing from the Jim Woodwing comic Frank. Oh yeah, there'd definitely be a little bit of Courage the Cowardly Dog in there, except I don't think his friends would be necessarily oblivious to what's happening to him. The way that, like, his friends are the kinds of characters that would be cognizant of what he's going through and worried about him. Yeah. There's a few other things I wanted to mention about these, like kobolds in like traditional Dungeons and Dragons are supposed to be kind of slightly dog-like. They're kind of a mix of like small lizard people, dragons, and dogs. They're supposed to yap a lot like dogs and stuff. So dog-like aspects is stuff I want to explore more with these characters as I develop them. So there are going to be very dog-like aspects, like he's kind of growling like a dog there. This gal is very pug-like or bulldog-like. There's definitely some dog-like aspects for how I was playing with him. My wizard guy, he's almost kind of like a monkey. He's got some mischievous aspects to him too. Cleverness, intelligence, dexterity, and grace are things that he'd be about. I could see even maybe adding a tail to him to really kind of lean into that, like he's some kind of demi-human species, or some demi-human species of primate. I actually kind of like that, and it kind of plays a little bit more into it almost kind of makes this sort of a Dark Crystal sort of world where there's not really humans. It could be something that I could play with, but I do like kind of the idea of making, okay, he's a human, he's someone we can relate to, even though he's kind of like a Gandalf wizard type or whatever. But I'm going to hold on to that as a possibility. Let's throw that in that folder. Put that in that folder. So, I mean, this is the kind of exploration and play you can do when you're thinking up your characters. There's a few not really rules, but principles that you can follow when you're designing your characters. One is, don't trust the first thing out of your pencil. Now, I'm putting an asterisk on that because sometimes you might get it right on the first try. Or you might want to go back and use what you got on the first try to develop more if you don't like the direction that you took when you return to a character design to try to redevelop it. But don't trust the first thing under your pencil. That is a design principle that that basically means that, like, you should try different passes at what you're doing. You should try different versions of the character. You should try them on different days after you've kind of like digested some other things and other influences and gotten more reference for other things. and have like maybe different approaches. You might come up with better ideas or better things to play with, and then you won't get locked into a character that is kind of half-baked. Like, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. That's a much better approach. That also works for actually like just developing design in general. Yeah, don't trust the first thing out of your pencil. Try playing with stuff. It doesn't sometimes what you'll and I put an asterisk on there, like I said, because because like at least you'll have explored different directions to go with the character before returning back to the original one, or thinking, what was it about that initial sketch that was kind of working that I'm not really getting from these other ones? Like, what was cool about the raw idea? At least you'll have something to relate back to. Okay, so the second principle, and these are principles that are in no particular order, by the way. This is just stuff I picked up, is avoid the ladder. And I'm going to put another asterisk there because this is a principle. This is not a hard rule. But avoid the ladder means avoid samey symmetry in your character design, or samey proportions in your character design. Try varying your shapes. Like here's a character. This is his upper body and his legs right here for proportions. That's really kind of boring. What if we did something wild, like this? His head's all the way up there. His torso's there, and his legs are kind of here. What if we did something like we played with the width a little bit? It doesn't even have to be this extreme either. Like, I mean, like more realistic characters are going to be a lot more contained than this. The ladder is like literally like, look at that, that's like a ladder almost. Same. So break that up with by playing with distorting the shapes. What you can also do is you can use kind of like these simple shape ideas, and then you can apply them to more realistic characters and stuff. Like this kind of, like in a guideline like this might imply, oh, this guy's going to have kind of a slightly exaggerated upper body. His head's going to kind of give the impression of being a squared off shape that might be implied by like his hair and his jaw shape a little bit, and his legs are kind of short and boxy or something. This character is a long-legged kind of bell-bottoms thing going on with a thin torso and maybe like a more kind of even squarish head, and so on. But you can play with these shapes in any combination you want. In width and depth and everything. So yeah, avoid the ladder. Some other principles I want to go over too, but I just wanted to touch on those. I'd go over in the future, but I just want to touch on those just to kind of start. We'll go over more principles of this kind of stuff in the future. Right now, we should be getting into drawovers. So I'm going to yoink some class model sheets and some Spiro stuff. And we'll take a look at these. So I actually posted these in chat. If you can bring these into your art programs, please do. We're going to be drawing on top of these to kind of understand them a little bit. This is the same approach that I was taking on Monday's class with the skull drawing stuff, where we'd mix it up with copy studies, freehand construction, and drawovers. I mean, how are you going to understand this unless you do a drawover of the shapes, after all? And it's not unlike what... I mean, that is basically one of the many exercises that animators do when they're on a new production, to kind of learn the model sheets. So I want to get you folks here used to the idea of studying from model sheets. You can integrate, you can kind of see how it's done from studying these and drawing over them and trying to replicate them and play with the shapes in them and stuff. So you can play with their building blocks to maybe, like, you might take, like, you could do something like, see the basic shapes of this character? You might take some of those, distort them and play with them and change them to create your own character, following the same principles without plagiarizing this character. Also, if you notice, like, look at this. I think that in this one, there's a lot of... This is a development art showing different versions. Like this one, I believe, this one's a model sheet right here. This one's that's a research sheet. That's a research sheet also. It says research right there. So this is a turnaround and model sheet right here. These research sheets are where they're exploring different looks for things and trying different versions of things. And so pay attention to that. It'll say research over here for these. If you notice, these are different versions of the Santa Claus origin story character here that they were trying as they were developing him. And this is them taking a crack in research at the model sheet turnaround for him. So I don't know how the final this design is, but this is getting closer to how he looks in the final film. I think this one is actually closer to how he's in the final film, because, like, there's more kind of empathy in his face and stuff, and more of a range of emotions, because he has a really good range of emotions in the film. There's a lot of brilliant acting with him. So you get this stern kind of "you've been naughty" sort of thing going on there. Woodsman, kind of cold-hearted. Then the kinder, gentler, kind of fatherly side to him. Secretive side to him. Sturdy, stout, proud. The kind of there's a little bit of a humorous side to him here. This is him being casual. This is him being positive and giving you or whoever's talking to him a thumbs up. He likes what you're doing. Yeah. This is a great attitude research sheet for sure. Research of the young version of him and his wife. Research of one of the other characters in the film. This is early versions of her that they were trying out. And this is closer to the final model for her, right here. Or I think this might actually be the final model. And, yeah. Early exploration, using that model on the previous page. This is the kind of stuff that, like, the animators would sort of do to try to figure out her attitude. And, like, how they'd animate her, find key poses for her. These might have been animation explorations based on some of the storyboards. more research, different versions of this character. This one in the center, I think, is the final model. But yeah, different versions of this little character. Some more of her. This is closer to the final model with different attitudes and stuff. Postmaster. A lot of research. I think this one is closer to a final model for that character. I think this is the father of the postman character. I forget who this character is. You think he was a butlerish character, a butler side character. Yeah. Turnaround sheet of one of the key kid characters. Turnaround pose sheet. Yeah. A lot of good stuff. So we got a few things to start with, and we'll just play with those right now. So let's see. I mean, the turnaround's a good one to start with too, but this one that has this kind of really weighty character here, I want to play with. What I really like is like this character is. There's several characters in the film that have their own arcs and their own changes of personality. This character starts off as kind of a relentless bully that sort of that kind of flips sides and turns into a more kind-hearted character. After she falls in love with another character she's supposed to be enemies with. So let's see. She's kind of very like Frankenstein. She's got kind of that box head going on there. Let's take a look at like head not too squared. So the basic shape of her head that they're showing here on the model sheet is kind of like this. And they don't want something that's kind of like a boxy Muppet thing. The characters in this could really be... characters in a lot of animated films could be thought of almost kind of like the same way you think of Jim Henson's Muppets. They're like hyper-articulate Muppets in a weird way, if you think about it. In terms of how they're exaggerated and stuff. But yeah. Like in this one we can definitely find the line of action here. I'm kind of using the chin here because like she's sort of jutting that out there. Some really nice gestures for the flow of her arms and shoulders here, going through, pressing down her weight down on our central protagonist character here. Everything about this drawing is like reinforcing the direction and gesture she's in right now. So I'm going with the expression sheet instead of the turnaround first, or the pose sheet or whatever, the research pose sheet for this character, because it'll help me loosen up a bit. And if I go in too early on that model sheet, I kind of feel like it's going to stiffen me up a little. So having a little bit of fun with a variety of loose poses or loose pose studies drawing over the character would probably put me in the right frame of mind, because like the characters are not going to be that stiff model sheet when they're in motion in an animated film, or even for like an illustration or something. They're going to be in interesting poses. They're not going to be like T-posing for a model sheet or something. The model sheet is there to reorient you to their proportions and their volumes and their feet, and help you problem solve when they go into an unusual posing and so on. That is the purpose of the model sheet, at least for for 2D animation. For 3D animation, the model sheet is a little bit of that, but it is also, if this was a 3D production, this would be used as a basis for making a 3D model. But this is a 2D production, so all this has to be hand-drawn. It's a lot more loose and pliable. But the animators still have to orient themselves using the turnaround, or not using the turnaround in the model sheets. Even though it's drawn in 2D, like the rules of creating a 3D illusion still apply, except they are focused in draftsmanship as opposed to computer handling the 3D. So remember that your model sheet is there to help you solve problems and maintain consistency. I think that it should be very important to stress the idea of having a working model sheet with what you're developing. That means like you can create a model sheet and a turnaround early on when you're developing your character, and evolve it as you improve at your drawing, and as you improve it, as you revise and update the character's design, and as you develop it further. You can evolve the model sheet and add stuff to it, and edit it, redo it, or whatever. And it's also good practice too. I mean, the act of trying to turn a character around in 3 dimensions is not easy. You have to do problem solving to figure out what stuff is going to go wonky, what shapes are going to turn this way or that, or look strange from a particular angle. There's a lot of weird things that can happen when you're trying to do a character turnaround. We'll touch on that today. In the future, we'll do a much more in-depth thing on turnarounds, but today I'm just going to touch on it to kind of give people a taste and to kind of get them oriented in thinking in terms of shapes and volumes for their characters that can be used pliably and turned in space. So, in addition to the Klaus model sheets, there's plenty of other stuff to dig through. There's some anime model sheets that I would say that are plenty worthwhile to dig through. I mean, it really depends. There's a lot of ones that I would probably not recommend for students that are learning to use, because the characters are really kind of oversimplified or designed in ways that aren't really ideal and kind of would reinforce bad habits if you practice from them. The Klaus model sheets are very classic for Disney and very well developed. And the Klaus research pages like this and stuff. So these are excellent resources to study from for sure. There's a lot of old Disney feature model sheets that are worth digging through. I would say that even some of the 3D animation Pixar stuff is worth digging through, because they do stuff like this in 2D for the 3D animated Disney films, and when they're developing it and even doing animation 2D pencil tests before they model the characters, they're still following the same principles of design and drawing and shape and stuff. Some of the anime that I would recommend to dig through, I mean, really, Akira for sure. A lot of Science Saru stuff and a lot of Studio Trigger stuff. Not all of it, mind you. Some of it you could potentially get very confused in. But I'd say a lot of Little Witch Academia is great. A lot of new BNA stuff is great for the new BNA series from Studio Trigger. Let's see. I tried studying actually from Flying Bark's designs for Rise of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I haven't been able to wrap my head around how they handle the shapes just yet, so I'm thinking that because of how sharp and angular the designs are, they might not be a good one to start with. But I'm going to dig into them some more because I really like what they did with the characters in that show. Yeah, I'd say even like early Fleischer and early Disney stuff of like the Rubber Hose era is good to go into too, because they break down the characters into very simple shapes. Let me actually bring some of that up real quick. We might do some drawovers of that. I mean, it would be awesome actually if in the future I did a Cuphead character focused class for this, or maybe had people try to develop their own kind of Cuphead style characters. Let's go down a little brief rabbit hole of Fleischer Studios model sheets. Gabby. This is from a Popeye short. You can see how they're pretty specific about the underlying character stuff. One of the reasons why I recommended Science Saru is because Science Saru and Science Saru and Masaki Yuasa, one of the main directors there. His body of work, a lot of it, he pulls from a lot of influences, but some of the more recent stuff in particular is heavily influenced by Fleischer Popeye shorts, especially in Lou Over the Wall. Not all of these are the best, though, by the way, but they're worth looking at. Like, some of these are really crummy because they were like doing them fast and cheap in terms of like the designs they had worked out. But some of them are really great. Like, yeah, I'd say this is pretty good. It's a really simple character. Yeah, the goons from Popeye. This is really nice. This one definitely they pulled some influence from for Cuphead for sure. Oof. There's an anti-Semitic caricature there. Oof. Yeah. That's neat. This is from one of the Fleischer Superman shorts. So a gorilla model sheet with actual like notes and stuff, written in this lovely comic book lettering. It's actually like Superman Fleischer model sheets. There we go. Ooh, that is fun. Look at those. Those are really cool. Some vintage kind of. You can see like how you can see like line of action using simplified shapes to kind of work out Superman and stuff. Clark Kent. Some Superman head models. Wow, all the way back in 1941. Yeah, I would say that digging through the Fleischer Superman stuff is definitely worth it. That, of course, segues into... Let's see here. That, of course, whoa, is that Alex Ross? Yeah, I think that's an Alex Ross drawing. That's cool. That definitely segues into that. But mainly it segues into Bruce Timm. It was trying to do like a hyper stylized take on the Fleischer shorts, and that was the basis of what Batman the Animated Series was. And of course, Superman, they got even more kind of stylized and pushed than even like Batman was. That one's a little bit closer to the later style. The original Batman the Animated Series was meant to be kind of taking a lot of heavy influence from those Fleischer shorts. We can definitely look into those in the future too. And also, let's segue that into Big O model sheets. So a lot of the animators that worked on, so a bunch of the animators that worked on, here's a Big O anime model sheets. So yeah, a lot of the Japanese animation studio that and a lot of the Japanese animators that worked on Batman the Animated Series were they loved Batman the Animated Series, and they loved working on it. So they made their own anime that was kind of a remixed version of ideas from Batman called Big O, which is a fantastic series, brilliant story, brilliant writing, brilliant themes and brilliant ideas, and brilliant design and animation. And that it was made in the 90s and it holds up today very well. So I mean, the threads between regional cartooning styles connect up together very interestingly. We go from Fleischer all the way over to this, and this of course became influential in a lot of other stuff too. But yeah, I'm gonna hold on to that. I might want to study from that later. But this is how you can kind of find inspiration of going down rabbit holes. Oh yeah, well we should look into Don Bluth too in the future. But I'm gonna stick with I'm gonna bring it back to drawing over the Klaus stuff right now. But anyway, one of the reasons why I recommend looking more into rubber hose animation of like early Betty Boop, early Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse, that kind of stuff, is because the rubber hose style of animation, which is the style of animation you see in Cuphead, it's called the rubber hose style because the way they handle limbs in the rubber hose style, like here's a basic kind of rubber hose character right here. A little animal kind of muzzle here. Maybe some ears. And a body here. So the reason why they call it rubber hose is because their limbs are kind of like tubes of rubber with air in them. They could be like bent and twist around and stuff. They very rarely would have like right angles or elbow joints. Sometimes they would, like you'd see them like kind of like the knob end elbow occasionally or something like that. But more often than not, you'd see the limbs kind of bend because that's easier to animate than like bendy joints and stuff. And I think it's a fantastic idea for to take your crack at doing those kinds of simplified characters, and I might be doing some more of that in the future. In fact, like newer animators, I would recommend should try to animate a lot of rubber hose characters because the mechanics of animation are a lot easier to digest if you're working on character designs that are relatively simple. This is a little bit beyond rubber hose though right here, where I'm getting into kind of joints, but there's a little bit of elements of rubber hose. This is more like kind of a newspaper cartoon or like Pogo Possum kind of character right here that I'm doing. I was kind of playing with some of the ideas here. Maybe give them like dog ears, like a Pluto tail. On that note, So the series BNA from Studio Trigger. I was watching a live stream for Anime Expo with Yo-Yo Shinari, the show's director. Let's see, BNA model sheet. Here we go. He was talking about how Michiru and all the other cast of BNA were designed with kind of like Felix the Cat, early Mickey Mouse kind of design ideas in mind, or Osamu Tezuka. Let me see if I can recall from memory. Like, he actually did some doodles of like examples, like so we get like Astro Boy or Mighty Atom. Who's got kind of like that stylized hair that's pointing off, kind of like Mickey Mouse. That Astro Boy was like was supposed to be like a combination of Pinocchio and Mickey, and maybe a little bit of Felix the Cat in his design. But like early Mickey Mouse had like these kind of stylized ears that were placed in strange angles. Pack my eyes here. Horrendously off modeling Rubber Hose Mickey. But these characters are kind of based on similar ideas. Here's Felix the Cat, if I can do my best of my ability from memory here. He's got like... I'm doing all these out of my head, by the way, with no reference. And also, you might recognize some of the design principles in here in another more recent character. Anyway, that is the approach that Yo-Yo Shinari took with the basic idea of the character designs in BNA. Especially because the story and the storytelling in BNA is very Osamu Tezuka. Anyone who's read Osamu Tezuka's work will kind of understand like this type of storytelling, the type of character personalities that are featured in it are very like homaging to Osamu Tezuka. Like the wolf character is almost kind of like a blackjack sort of personality. And Michiru is a very she's like one of the precocious female protagonists from some of Tezuka's work. In addition to kind of having there's a little bit of Astro Boy in her for sure. There was always like a subtext to, like a moral subtext to Tezuka's work. Tezuka's work about social problems like racism, discrimination, and what it means to be human. And they explored that in Astro Boy. There was discrimination and mistreatment and abuse of robots by humans. There was stuff about man's relationship to nature in like Kimba the White Lion, which is something that I know I mean it's pretty much known that like Lion King was heavily inspired by Kimba. or Jumbo Emperor Leo or whatever. I'm doing a really bad version of her, but she kind of follows the same idea. She's based on like really. Her basic idea is based on really simple shapes that can be like kind of fitted together like puzzle pieces into simple expressions and other things. Horrendously off model, but you get the idea. Oh my god, she looks like Temmie. I swear I did a better drawing of her the other day, but anyway. Yeah, I mean, like these kind of ideas all relate to each other in terms of design, and you can find inspiration from just about anywhere and kind of fit together like puzzle pieces, combine it with influence from real world reference and ideas, people you know, places you've seen, stuff you're researching, and create kind of a mix of characters. The idea that you should be approaching your character designs with is to keep playing with them and to try to play with the story ideas and the ways that they can express themselves, see what works, what's going to work and what doesn't. Try different things, try changing the pace of what you're doing, or try drawing the character a different way. And also, every now and then take time to exercise some good drawing skills, go back over your rough sketches and refine them, and see what happens if you can pick out better defined shapes in them and stuff. Like, when you're ideating on a character, your page should look ridiculously messy. Like, there's a character development page in the Ratatouille art book where they were trying to find the design for Remy, and they were using and the artist was using traditional paper, and there's just a mess, an absolute mess of like red colored pencil behind the ink, or well, I think it was either ink or like dark graphite pencil. It was done over the red color pencil, where it's like really evident that they were just like scribbling like crazy to try to find the attitude and the pose of Remy, like feeling it out and stuff. Like, let me see here. Remy concept art, Pixar. There might be a picture of him somewhere here. Here, I found some of it. There's some of it. There's some other ones that aside from this, but this is sort of what I was talking about. There's one drawing in particular, but it's this kind of like, look at that. Look at how much this is like an absurd amount of scribbling and exploring and like that's not working, scribbling, desperation, trying to find the extremes and tweak it and stuff. Like, I want to kind of model myself in the future the more I practice this stuff, kind of like on this. This is what your character designing should look like when you're trying to really kind of explore something. When you're really trying to push it, like this guy's got a basic idea for this character, but he's really pushing it. And eventually he's able to kind of see it through the, almost like picking like cloud shapes out of the sky. And then he was able to kind of define the idea a little better with some marker, it looks like. Some marker and some dark colored pencil in these. He's the person who did these is also very obviously an animator, because the way he's thinking through these is like how an animator would think through their drawings. Like posing them out and stuff, you can see kind of the rough red lines and so on. There was one drawing in particular that I'm really trying to find that it's kind of in that vein, but there's one that's like even more scribbly than these. But I mean, like, this is the amount of, like, effort that goes into trying to push a pose and find something in there of a character and figure out their attitude. You can see it physically reflected on this paper right here, with them exploring it and picking it out with their sketching. Like, they kind of sculpted into it. And they probably didn't do it all at once. They probably explored it on an initial pass, then scribbled it again, and erased some things, and scribbled again, went back to the drawing again, thought about it some more, came back to it. I'm starting to think about this. Think about it. Like, yeah, let me maybe bring up the stuff I was drawing earlier to show you how I'm kind of doing a low-grade version of that. Right now, that is going to be an iterative approach in the future. So warm-up drawings, warm-up drawings, warm-up drawings. There we go. This is the first drawing I did of a character. I wasn't even really thinking about the character. I was just trying to get some kind of fun sort of kobold thing. I didn't even start as a kobold. I started just kind of feeling out the body, and then I was like, oh, what kind of character will I make this? I think I'll make him a kobold. And I kind of squished him because I didn't like how generically I tried maybe like picking some random names for them as I did a companion character. I tried the expression on his face a little bit. I kind of like this. I kind of like the simplicity of these a little bit better. And I might go back to this a bit. This was a first attempt at like the wizard character. You can see multiple versions of me drawing over it. The first initial one I wasn't too happy with. It was really bleh. So I started pushing the shapes a little more. This is where I'm at right now. Pushing with it, playing with it, having fun with it. Thinking of like how like this kind of rough loose silhouette right here of them all kind of ensemble together that I can go back through and like kind of
Happy? I think it's time for an argument.
yeah. I'll hold on to that for later. This would be considered like a story sketch sort of thing to kind of explore the character right here. There we go. But yeah. Where was I? But yeah, kind of learn to play with your characters a lot and just have fun with it and see what you can discover with them. I'm planning on like I'll be going back to the characters with exploring different ideas I kind of like the direction a little bit that they're heading, but I'll find ways to kind of maybe push them. I might even get some feedback or some ideas from other people. I'm doing them mainly for an exercise, but I do kind of like what they're doing, and I want to maybe see what kind of adventures I could create with those four. Yeah, part of the reason I'm doing this is like it's kind of getting a little bit in my muscle memory some of the tools that these artists to. Someone's hot micing. Can you please stop that? Thank you. Yeah, kind of like drawing over the work of others to sort of understand it and understand the tools that you can use to incorporate into your own design is a good way to learn. I'll be doing way more of this because I'm not by any means a very good draftsman, a very good character designer, but doing this kind of stuff is how you build up that skill. It's this one stepping stone. I mean, there's other stuff like you got to practice your traditional draftsmanship, your figure drawing, your observation drawing, perspective, and you got to have an understanding of perspective and other kinds of rules about shape and volume. And I'm going to server mute that person who is hot micing right now. Who are they? Unless you push to talk yourself. Alright, so. Okay, Jerry, please push to talk yourself. Otherwise, I'm going to server mute you. Or actually, I'll just manually mute you, so then I don't hear it. Anyway, so let's get into turnarounds a little bit. This one might be a little bit complex, but we can go over some of the stuff in it. Just get rid of that. So a few things about this turnaround. There's a few tools at play here in order to achieve your turnarounds. One of the most obvious ones that you can see on screen right now is using guidelines, like so. Like just straight lines across the character, and you'd also use these in character lineups to compare their sizes and stuff. And character lineups are important. That's also part of the reason why for my drawing of those four characters here. Hang on one sec. That's also why for my drawing of those four characters, when I got to this point, I wanted to incorporate all of them on the same page to kind of see their height relationships and stuff. One thing I can tell immediately is she's a little small right here, but this character would probably definitely come up a size or two because she's a little tiny compared to the other characters. So I'd make her maybe about 2 sizes bigger, kind of like the proportions that she is here. But putting all your characters on the same page lets you establish how they look in relation to each other and sort of define them a little bit better. And you can also get a feel for their height, and how they'll appear together when they're interacting with each other. Like this is the play phase right here. The next phase for me would be to kind of lock in a few things and maybe try a turnaround or pose sheets or something. Like those necessarily wouldn't even be the final designs for the characters. I'd want to, for my own practice sake and development sake, maybe try to see how a turnaround goes and see what problems I run into. The goal with those characters, by the way, that I made, is I want to make them characters that are viable for 2D animation. So that means that I'd have to solve problems working in the direction of that, and also address my own personal shortcomings with my 2D animation skills, so that I can rise to the level of quality I would need to animate and draw those characters better. So let's see here. Maybe let's get rid of one of these, so I can boost the size of the model sheet. So what I want people doing here, you can kind of vibe to what I'm doing, but you really should be drawing. Maybe sketch ideations of your characters. Draw on top of some model sheets that you found. This could be the Klaus ones. It could be some of the ones that I've shown, like Fleischer Brothers stuff, Big O. Maybe like the stuff in Studio Trigger's B&A, and you want to mess with that. Whatever you think you can vibe with. So first things first, we actually have the other next important thing about this model sheet is we have a head measurement system here, in relation to his head specifically. Like, how many heads is his head tall at? Out of his heads. So this particular character design, obviously, like, he very heavily favors the jaw because he's a character that does a lot of lip flapping. He has the most lines of dialogue of any character in the film, and he's kind of a slick talker who kind of is good at talking his way out of situations or tricking people and stuff. So he's a tricky character. He's a the things that I'm reading into him. There's a trickiness to him. There is a kind of a sense of like weakness to him in that he doesn't have much muscle on him, but he does seem very nimble. Like, this seems like somebody who could this does seem like somebody who could, like, he's athletic but not strong, you know. So he could probably escape from a lot of tough situations. And this in this particular uniform that he's wearing and stuff, like, he may be pretty new at the whole postman thing, but he's still a professional. Still carries himself like a professional, even on this model sheet. And that's kind of reflected in the acting of the film. Like, early on when he's trying to deliver the mail, his posture is kind of unprofessional, I want to say, I think. Like, he's kind of, I mean, they kind of play into anything with the acting, really. This hat he's got, it kind of plays with the shapes of the smaller proportions of his head. He looks funny in that hat. He's a funny comedic character, and also he's a big brain, big thinky boy character. So he's got a giant postman thinking cap going on his head. He's a dynamic character. He kind of reminds me of Guybrush Threepwood a little bit. He's a very Guybrush Threepwood character, I would say. I'm definitely certain that that the character designers were influenced by Monkey Island's character designs. But you can see, like, when this character they have a different model sheet for when he doesn't have his clothes on, like when he's around his house, when he doesn't have his hat, and so, like, that changes the shapes of his body. Like when he's kind of out of his cloak or whatever. But you can see like the basic shape of his body is this kind of, he's got like this, well here, let me change color real quick. He's got kind of a circle up here. The basis of his head right here is another circle. You can even say that the ears are kind of, you got smaller shapes breaking down here. But the overriding shape right here is another kind of like, is a kind of triangle right here for his jaw. Then you get kind of this sort of triangular shape here. And this bottom part of his main torso is kind of a triangle shape that's feeding up into his upper body in his head. And that's counterposed almost kind of by these other triangles for his thighs that are feeding back up into his legs. He's got very, very thin kind of stick legs. You might want to say that I think you might want to say that are almost kind of elongated cubes. And kind of stick feet. But of course the balls of the feet, which balls of the feet are essentially cubes themselves, turning in space, if you really think about them. That is actually the best way to think of feet, by the way. Think of the heel as a cube. And then from the bottom of the cube, you extrude out in front of it. Get like a little floor map there of the front of the foot. Then you kind of connect this to the foot there. Extrude some of the foot right here. And then you add a little divot there for, and that's kind of a foot. Then a couple C curves up here for the calf and the ankle. That's like the basic structure of a foot, a simplified structure of a foot. And let's say if you want to raise the foot, it's pretty easy. You just kind of hinge up the cube like that, raise up the heel of the foot. Something like that. That's a simple way to think of feet, and that's actually happening on his feet here. Very, very itty bitty, but the basic idea is happening there. Like, you don't really notice that in this, because this is a model sheet for cleanup. This is not a and most competent animators would be able to kind of figure out where the basic shapes are, because they understand the principles of drawing. But obviously these aren't the only model sheets that the production use, so there would be other examples elsewhere that break down the shapes further for sure. Like Disney got really deep into the nitty-gritty for their character designs and their construction. Let's see here, Disney model sheets. Especially the 1990s Disney stuff. I mean, like, they always did, even back in the day. But the 1990s stuff in particular, I want to take a peek at. Look at that, the finding the surface dimensionality of the genie, for example, in Aladdin. Let's cycle through these until you find some good stuff. Oh yeah, here's a good construction of Mickey right there. From 1938. Wow. Really good Goofy. There's some amazing Goofy pages, by the way. Goofy was one of the most developed design-wise characters back in the day. Here we go. Here's what's her face? Meg? Yeah, Meg from Hercules. Showing off like her. This is a sheet showing off like how her head is constructed. Using kind of like the angular shape language that was inspired by Gerald's scarf on the film. Like too round, too thin, proportions of the head and mouth, curved on the top of the head. Like the good thing about like the Disney model sheets is like they're so descriptive, and also the Fleischer ones too. There's quite a lot of good model sheets out there, but like the Disney and Fleischer ones, is they're very, very descriptive about how to construct these characters. So you can basically reverse engineer drawing these on model with the content that's been posted online. Oh, and speaking of like Astro Boy inspired stuff, here's Jenny the Teenage Robot, and she's very kind of flat compared to like Astro Boy or something, but Fleischer stuff, flat stylized, kind of UPA-ish mixture with Astro Boy. But I mean, she has her own like kind of elements of volumetric design to her. And they have sheets actually explaining like how the hair is handled. Like they actually have a design sort of almost template in mind for how her hair is handled to make it a pleasing shape. And hair do's and don'ts here, of like the rules of what a hair follows. They describe common mistakes there. I mean, descriptive model sheets like this, these are great to go through because, oops. Because you can learn so much about like the design thought that goes into the stuff. Like there's a lot of really generic ways you'll tend to draw things yourself, but when you're following rules that have been kind of worked out for a particular design approach, for like a particular show or particular comic, or like something that you're making yourself that you want to have some kind of design aesthetic in mind, like rules like how these limbs are stylized and stuff here are examples of things you might make for yourself to follow, which inherently impose limitations, constructive limitations for the style that you want to go for. Getting really in depth there with Belle's head construction here. This is on Beauty and the Beast 2, I believe, one of the VHS, one of the direct-to-VHS things. Here's Ariel's loose head construction from Glen Keane. Loose body construction. Like, they would animate the characters like this, by the way, on their, like, rough passes. Like really, really, really super simple shapes, because then it's just about how the simple shapes move, and then they can just like break it down further and add more bits of the acting and the facial expression and the detail and so on in step by step. Like literally, if I was animating this character, it would be about that basic. Like from a what's that?
Oh, okay.
Like I'd probably do something like. Huh?
What's happening? What's going on?
Excuse me?
Is this like a
Yeah, this is a class. We are in class session right now. Can you please push to talk yourself?
Oh yeah. Oh.
Thank you. So, I don't know. I'd like do something really rough and loose, because then I can just like lay it down really quickly like see how stuff is moving. Like let's go from like this pose to maybe like some like he goes from like this pose to maybe he shifts on his feet. Maybe don't want to change the position of his feet just for this little demonstration. But he goes like that to like of course I'd want to, if I was animating him, I'd probably want to shoot some reference or something of whatever I'm having him do. The animators on Klaus shot extensive reference of themselves performing his scenes. Right now I'm just kind of playing with the puppet a little bit. But like, when I animate my characters, they're going to be on the first pass, looking about that rough. Like, I don't know, let's play with this right now. Let's maybe like place one of my characters in the Klaus world a little bit by just drawing over this model sheet. This kind of looks like Bubble Bobble. Now that I think about it. I'd have to refer back to how I drew them earlier before I kind of get her looking more in the spirit of what I originally intended for her, but that's kind of the thing. Like, I mean, you can even do what I'm doing here. Like, if you're kind of riffing and like studying, you can kind of riff and create your own characters inspired and influenced by another model sheet. It might help kind of orient you to figuring out their proportions and stuff. Like, I'm gonna maybe swipe the postman guy's proportions for my wizard, just for the purposes of getting kind of loose, sort of stickman sort of thing in here. I like the idea of his staff actually kind of being like a guitar on his back, a little bit. He might even have a hat, so tilted at an angle, like that. I like a little where that is going. I might even like make more wizard robes kind of thing with him. I'm not sure if I like how this is though. Oops. So that just means take another layer. Oops. along those lines. Then we get our kobold coward character. I'll just get kind of a basic idea of him in here. Should probably turn the Klaus model sheet back on again. I can go back through, of course, and develop these later. Figure out the drawing problems in them. Or try another passes at them. It's also giving me some ideas to play with their proportions a little bit more, like that's his legs there, that's his body there, that's his head here, I think that's his waist, so his hips right there. Because this character is a bird, I maybe want to do a model sheet of them showing their wingspan. Some like a little like a pterodactyl right now, but the basic idea is there, and then I can go back with like some bird anatomy reference after I've kind of got like the shapes down and develop it further. Just get a little bit perturbed to like have her wings stretched out like that. She's more pug-like in how I'm playing with her right now, for sure. Playing up with that dog aspect of Dungeons and Dragons kobolds. She's got horns here. Goofy would definitely be someone, Goofy character designs would definitely be something I would look at a lot more. Disney Goofy for our cowardly protagonist lizard character. Also, like, don't be like me. I have a crazy DPI size just of canvas just because I like having everything there. It's almost kind of like an image board. of things I'm drawing. You don't necessarily have to do what I'm doing with that. You can work on a much smaller canvas, especially if you have lower end hardware. Also, I'm curious if anyone has any questions to ask right now. And are you drawing any of your own ideas? And if so, can you post them in the Discord chat so I can see them? Either your own studies from model sheets that you might be doing and vibing to, or character design drawings that you've done. Yeah, when we get more into more in depth with character turnarounds in future sessions, I'll be showing you how to like break down the character models into basic shapes a lot more. This is a taste and kind of an overview. Like you can see on the Klaus model sheet, like there are signifiers on this character to show what direction he's turning, what direction his body and his head are facing, and everything from like individual features to like the direction of his eyes and stuff like that, to like these little shoulder things right here. Those are directional signifiers right there, and points of interest that make his design appealing, especially when you see him in a shoulder shot. My PC's fine. My PC's not chugging at all. Saving the file is not an issue right now. It's if I make a lot more layers and a lot more drawings, it's going to start chugging. But Clip Studio Paint is surprisingly well optimized even for lower end machines. Mine's not exactly. Mine's kind of lower end mid range by today's standards, I would say. I eventually want to invest in. Oh, this is a good time to plug. This is a good time to plug my my coffee page. Whoops. For donations, and also good time for me to check Twitch Prime subs or Twitch subs that people have given me. It looks like somebody actually subbed me. Cool. Subs are awesome. The only issue is that like Twitch subs take about 45 days to process for affiliates. So I will eventually see that money, but it's gonna be quite a while. Yeah. Let me see if I can find this person who gave me the sub so I can give him a shout out. Wow, there's a lot of new followers, but here we go. L to the G. Thank you for the Prime sub. But yeah, my coffee page. Here's my coffee page right here for donations. If you like what I'm doing with these classes, please give me a donation goal. I'm trying to reach the donation goal of a backup hard drive, so if something goes on the fritz, I won't lose all my art. I'm a good ways along in the goal. I'm actually further along because I have a bunch of Twitch Prime money that it's going to be taking some time to process, but every little bit will help. And supporting me through coffee just goes directly into my PayPal account without like any overhead charge to coffee. The only overhead charge is through PayPal. But yeah, any extra money that goes beyond the goal there will go into the next bit of hardware I need for my backup system. I'm going to be getting a kind of a cloud backup system as a third way to back up my things. So I have three copies of files at any given time, or copies of my system, so I don't lose my shit. And then from there, there's just additional things that are going to make doing these classes easier that I have a list of that I'll be adding to in the future. So does anyone have any questions? You can speak up in voice chat for them, or... Yeah.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
This is a little specific, but with the turnaround stuff, I'm not really used to doing it. When you do like, I'm having a tough time doing a character. He has kind of a snout, and I'm having a tough time getting from the front view to the quarters to the side view.
You break them up into basic shapes, like the most basic shapes possible. If it's a snout, the good news on that is it what style of character is it? Like a very kind of Disney sort of, or what?
Yeah, I'd say definitely like Disney building specifically.
So it'd be like an anthropomorphic animal character, kind of.
Yeah.
All right. So on my screen right now, it's kind of like the basic construction of a Disney head. Not always do they use this, but this is like the basic generic Disney head, Disney character head. It's usually start with a globe that has two kind of ellipses going through it to indicate direction, and then the bottoms of the eyes rest on the eye. The eye line is basically the halfway point there, and the eyes rest at the bottom of them. So like on Klaus here, for example, on the Klaus character here, for example, his head would I would like to see the character construction of him broken down, so we can actually see where the actual sphere is. But here we go. Actually, we got it right here. So for this particular character, the eye line is actually located. His eyes are actually located below the halfway point, just about here. It's probably because for this character, he's got an emphasis on his brain, to a little bit. But your basic Disney character has kind of usually has that kind of eyes resting on the eye line sort of thing. And then you usually get like a human face, you get something like that, or animal face, it would be like kind of a muzzle sort of thing like that. So turning the nose in space, I mean, it just basically comes down to using simplified shapes to orient yourself. You could literally just do this. A sphere in front of the face, or a sphere against the face. Like, let's do that. Another sphere there for the nose. There. Something like those. Something like this. And then you just line that up to make sure it's measuring right. I'm not going to measure it exactly here, just for the demonstration. But then, like, I mean, you can kind of work out where the angle would be at a midpoint between those two poses. Got the ellipse here. That influences the bend of placement of the eyes. And you can kind of work out the muzzle here. And then in order to make it all connect up, oops. One of the dangers you can run into when you're doing your character design is you overcomplicate them. So a good thing to do, and then I'll be doing as I develop characters like the ones that I've done today, is kind of peeling back to simplicity. Like, you can kind of overload details into stuff. For animation, like simplicity is best. sometimes you might get some complex design in there, but it's complexity designed in a way that's relatively easy for the animator to memorize and to work with. In the case of this character from Klaus, you have some very basic shapes that are just basic enough for you to kind of push and pull around when you're animating him. And then when it gets more, and then when you get into more detail, I mean, this is a cylinder here basically, or a cylinder with a smaller cylinder in there. Those are cylinders. There's a kind of a box shape going on here for his upper torso. Those wrapping over and under there. He has very, very kind of milk call looking hands, which are points of complexity, but you can break those down into in like a cube for the palm, for example, and then like a basic sort of shape for the hands. And maybe just indicate that for the fingers that are separated at the front. I mean, these are simple tubes and cylinders right here for his limbs that have endpoints on them, and the endpoints are very important for describing three-dimensionality. Like there's a little cylinder here that, out of which his wrist is coming. There's a wrinkle here for the fabric. You can see some more of the three-dimensionality of it here for how the wrinkle wraps over the 3D form there. But I mean, like, you start this with like really basic shapes. Basic shapes combined with like the gesture and the overall flow of the character. And you just kind of work it up phase by phase. And I mean, like, these kinds of designing these characters is almost kind of like designing a song, and you want to think of it like in terms of like almost kind of like a medieval bard designing a song, where they where like the skalds and stuff of Viking times and stuff like that, when they would tell stories, they would tell them in rhyme because it's easier for the skald to remember the stories if they rhyme. It's the same thing with animation. If there's kind of a rhyme to the design, it's easier to remember what goes from this. Okay, this goes into this. This goes into this. So like when you're designing your character, you're almost kind of designing a little bit of a song or a piece of poetry that can be pliable to what you need it to do. And it's flexible so that it comes alive. That's why favoring simplicity is good, because then you have more range to play with it. And one of the best examples of that, I think, is Mob Psycho, of recent times, is Mob Psycho 100. Whose character designs are taken, of course, from the manga artist One's designs, which are very, very simple because he's not exactly the best draftsman. But from that, they're able to like layer in a lot of anatomical complexity and understanding of form and movement. So that these super simple character designs, they're able to do a lot with. So it's more about how in Mob Psycho 100, it's more about how the characters move than how they're designed in still frames. Not the best examples through all this. Here's a really good one. Yeah, I mean, that's a really simple character design, and they're able to just play with it And for this particular show, the animators are allowed to go off model and mess around with it in really funny and surprising ways. It gives more freedom for the animators to be creative and put their own creative stamp on the particular scenes that they've done. And that makes for a more lively and interesting show than most anime. It was very self-conscious what they did with this show. That's why this show shows one of my favorite animes of recent note for a lot of reasons. Here's a great scene right here. Look at that. Oops, fucking tenor. Yeah, but I mean, Mob is just basically a circle with, let's look at this character design sheet here. Model sheet. Here we go. There are some model sheets of Mob Psycho 100 that were posted online. I mean, he's well drawn, and there's like he follows all the rules of figure drawing and stuff. But his actual design is really simple. It's like these dots, these dot eyes, and very simple features. You can see where there's like points of complexity. Like he has very simple shapes for his body, but there's like thought that went into like some of the simple wrinkles and stuff, and complexity in his shoes there, for example. The shoes kind of ground him in the real world. They're almost kind of like an anchor point for making this character more believable. His hands are too, even though his hands are clasped to the side. The hands on, I'm having a brain fart for this character's name, but people here should know who he is. Yeah, this guy is big about he's got facial expressions too, but his hand poses are like the main thing that makes him so expressive. Like his, let's see here, Reagan, that's his name. Reagan hand poses. Some fan art that people did picking up on that fact. Yeah, this shows it too, but I'm trying to find a model sheet of him with his hands. Or fan art playing with that. Like, this character was all about how he does his... this character was all about his crazy hand poses. Well, he's about a lot of things, but that was a major thing about him, of course. Which I think is fantastic. Hands are an excellent point of storytelling. Making the character's personality told through his hands and his wild gestures is really fantastic. And he's a really simple character design too, just like Mob. Like the same principle of the dot of the simple dot eyes. I mean, compare that to like how complex the eye designs can get on modern anime characters. I heard it expressed by one animator who was like really annoyed at having to like draw these, like spend so much time drawing these like overly detailed anime eyes. Say that like modern anime eyes are like more time consuming and harder to draw than the battleship Yamato. So I am someone who really loves simplicity, that you can do stuff with, a simple design that you can play with and have fun with and have it do different things and has the freedom for you to play and express with, is the kind of stuff that I want to aim myself towards as I get better at my own draftsmanship and my own character designing abilities, my own animation skills.
He's good though.
Yeah.
I was working on something. I want to get your advice and tips on how I can improve it.
Sure.
I came up with it while we were doing the class, but I'm actually definitely some of the better stuff I've done.
Sure. You can post it in chat. Who was speaking?
Truly.
Okay. So this guy, whoops. Fitting. I've got Remy back there when I brought up your rat. Alright, so... Looks like... this looks like something I've seen before, first off. I think this looks like the... what's his name from... the head kind of reminds me from The Great Mouse Detective, the Ratigan villain in that a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I think he might have been. This is something that can often happen when you're character designing without. When you're in your first pass in character design, you'll wind up, or when you're just sketching and ideating randomly, you'll unconsciously wind up like drawing something you've seen before.
Yeah.
Which is not, it's not a problem. If you're just having fun and grooving and stuff and playing with this stuff, that's totally fine to mess with that. But I mean, this character looks like you're kind of going for a rat, although his tail kind of looks like it might be a wolf's tail or something. First,
I was trying to originally do a ferret, but I kind of lost it.
So I like the gesture. Well, maybe we can turn it into a ferret because I think that'd be more interesting than a Ratigan clone. That also, being a ferret, also would have kind of slightly explained why his torso is so distorted, because like this whole area down here is really bothering me. He seems really kind of off balance to me right now, and like this whole area is really bugging me. Like if I was gonna make him a rat character, probably what I would do is I'd first address the issue of his legs kind of not really working for me. Maybe widen his stance a little bit and raise the crotch up a bit, something like that. He's also looking a little stiff in his upper body, so I'd maybe loosen back the shoulders a bit. We'll keep it simple though. Alright, let's see here what I can do with those arms. Maybe pump up his chest a little bit. I want him to look more like he's actually got his feet planted. Put a little box in there for the pelvis so I can kind of feel out how his legs are angled against that, connected to that. If it's too high or too small, maybe bump it up in size a little bit. So I'm doing a rat pass on it. I might try a ferret pass on it. So I'm trying to go for shapes that play into the kind of almost mafia bodyguard, semi-sophisticated villain character that I'm sort of feeling out in here, and make him more distinct than like a Ratigan clone. I'm just feeling things out at this point. Let's maybe, for the purposes of this, let's try maybe raising his arm. Where I have a straight down here coming out from his body. And the top of his arm, a couple of kind of curves like that. Of course, I want to keep it more in line with the other arm he has. So shrink the wrist a bit, maybe. It's not the best pose, but I wanted him either pointing or holding a gun, just to see how it looks. Give him like a kind of a Desert Eagle looking gun, I guess. It's like an Agent Smith rat, I almost want to say. Let's maybe give him sunglasses. So I could either go with rat feet here, or I could give him some kind of shoes. I think I want to ground this in kind of a animal world, instead of like, if I had him without shoes, that would be either more cartoony, or that would be more like, this is a miniature rat-sized rat, as opposed to a character that's like kind of in a Beastars sort of world or something. I think I'm gonna go with the latter. Although that's not always the case. I believe in Great Mouse Detective the characters wore shoes, or at least some of them did. Let's see, Great Mouse Detective. Yeah, they all wore shoes, except for like the giant dog that they rode around. Yeah, they all wore full outfits in Great Mouse Detective, so they pretty much like were in their own little rodent world, but it was like miniaturized. So that could happen with this guy too, but I'm going to say that this is like a man-sized rat in an animal world. Too worried about gun design. Gun design is one of those blind spot areas that I really need to practice, by the way. But for now, I just need a block right there. Like for gun, I mean, like as with anything, anytime you encounter a blind spot, the solution to that is to do research and practice it. So, like if I was going to develop this guy further, I'd grab a bunch of pictures of guns and start practicing and try to break down and understand how guns work a little better. If I'm on a project that's going to involve, if I get on like a project that's going to involve like a lot of guns, that means I'm going to have to do a lot of research into guns. And you'll face challenges like that as an artist. When they hire you to projects where you don't necessarily know everything that they're going to be having you animate, that is a good time to do the research, and they hire you because they know that you're a sensible enough draftsman to know that you need to do research when you encounter things you haven't really drawn much before. They hire people for their adaptability, in addition to being able to comport to the style of the production and the quality and the demands of quality. So now that I got this, I kind of want to push the feet. But you see what I'm doing with this is not unlike what I was showing with Remy on these pages, where it's just scribble, 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 trying to feel it out and stuff, and trying to find a character in there, or find shapes that kind of feel good. So when I kind of get something moving that direction, I'll start really like leaning into and darkening like doubling down on the lines that feel good to me, or kind of in the range of what feels right for where I want to go with this guy. And then when I'm feeling it, when I'm feeling like it's about time for me to get in there, I'll do another pass kind of like this, where I sort of pick out stuff from here. I might even do like another pass where I'm doing scribbles and stuff in another color. In this case, I'm just gonna go for it, play it bold, and see what happens. See what happens and what works and what doesn't if I try it this way. So I'm not necessarily like doing all the outlines here. Whoops. I'm trying to figure out what feeds into what a little bit, and what shapes would be used to construct it a little bit. When I'm doing this, I'm also drawing on my knowledge and study of animal drawing and animal anatomy. I've drawn rats before. And I would probably want to do another pass on a character like this where I've actually looked at some rats for ideas to riff off. I might find some character ideas. Really going with the Agent Smith kind of thing here. It's okay to ideate from imagination too. That's also part of the don't trust the first thing out of your pencil idea. Like sometimes it's good to do like a brain spill of your imagination, but like you shouldn't get locked in too early to how your character look, which like those other characters I was drawing earlier, I'm gonna play with them some more. I kinda like the direction they're going though, but that's not gonna stop me from trying other things. I'm doing more research. So my draftsmanship isn't that good compared to the people I want to learn from. As I get better, I want to maybe try to push myself to go beyond the crutches that I use currently when I draw. I'm going to go with 3 fingers. Let's maybe stylize this gun that he's holding a little bit for fun. As long as it feels a little bit like a solid object that he's clasping.
Hey, Space Dad, can I ask another question?
Sure.
Well, I'm not sure if this is gonna fly, but it kind of files under concept art, although not as much character. If you were to like say design, like your design, like you made the gun and stuff. But if you were to like design a unique item for something,
What do you mean? Like a key item?
Like,
That's getting into prop design. But I mean that is related to character design. I mean like the props and stuff have to look like they come from the same world as the characters. And we're gonna get into prop design and environment design.
or like a little later.
Yeah, well, in future classes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Something like this. I don't really like how this leg is postured. Let me see here if I can troubleshoot this a little. Maybe if I flip it. You've definitely probably, if you've paid attention to Ethan Becker, you've definitely seen the flipping it technique, which works. I mean, like the point of the flipping it technique is to, when you get used to seeing something a certain way, flipping it can let you see where things are going wrong a little easier. But, and there is a caveat to this, there is such a thing in the brain as right side bias, where things that look like they make sense one way won't look like they make sense when you flip them the other way. And I know there's a lot of artists that wind up frustrating themselves and destroying their work when they do an image flip and then try fixing it the other way around. They flip it back and it still doesn't look right. They wind up like ruining something that looked great from that particular that looked great before they flipped it, because it plays into the illusion of how our eyes read an image, and they didn't even really need to fix it. They did unnecessary fixing because of that weird right side bias thing, which normally happens when you look at faces, but it can happen with other things too. So just be aware of that. Like, you do want to fix proportional issues and things like that, but you do kind of need to be cognizant of weird little hitches like that and how the brain and the eye reads images.
How can you do the flipping technique but in traditional?
Mirror. In fact, you'll actually see a lot of traditional comic book artists and draftsmen use mirrors. You can also use photography with smartphones or whatever.
Okay.
You'll often see like Junji Ito literally he has a mirror above his workspace in the videos that show him working, so you can like see him glancing upwards to like look at the mirror to make sure that things are reading right.
Nice.
You'll also use that for facial expressions too. So I kind of like where this guy's going a little bit. The legs aren't worked out the best, and the crotch is not really too good. But I mean, like, based on, I've got this as a starting point here for maybe just doing a ferret version of this guy. Maybe these guys are part of there's another character in this group. They're kind of like rodent, mafia, Matrix agent, Secret Service agent sort of characters. I'm gonna actually look at a ferret. Like, how would I make a ferret menacing like this? The ferret kind of already has the glasses sort of built in to their face, so I would just maybe have like a wraparound shades thing kind of going on. They have like triangle ears, but I'm trying to figure out how to do this in a way that looks menacing and dangerous, because it's easy to draw cute ferrets because they just look so cute. So Let's see. Angry ferret. Oh wow, yeah, there's some vicious pictures of angry ferrets. Maybe I can draw from those. So I'm thinking more in terms of like a vicious stoat killing a rabbit, like the kind of ferociousness that a ferret adjacent or weasel adjacent animal in the wild might exhibit when chasing prey. This guy would not be a very nice guy, is what I'm trying to aim for, but unfortunately he still looks cute. So we're just going to have to roll with this, because otherwise we're going to be here all night. But one of the things about ferrets is long bodies, small legs. So unlike the rat, I'm going to have to make a slinky body. Maybe I can play with that some more. This guy's very kind of snaky. Like when he's chasing the hero in the story, he might be able to like kind of creepily sneak into places and ninja his way into ambushing and sneaking up on people and hiding in ceilings and rafters that other characters wouldn't expect, to make him kind of frightening to show up. I actually kind of want to make this ferret a hero now, the way he's shaping up. Those look like Plastic Man goggles for the shades. Yeah, this looks way more like a hero. Let's go with that. Okay, the rat is the villain. The ferret is the hero. The ferret might be some kind of a parkour character who doesn't really necessarily have a gun. So maybe skew that a little bit. So this guy's a really slender, kind of ninja-y athlete. Pretty loose clothes, so he can stay flexible. You probably would have really expressive hands. Ferrets have pretty well-defined hands, so I might want to push that. This guy could even be barefoot. So he's pretty youthful. Getting a Neo in the Matrix vibe now because of the sunglasses. I'm not going to put it in a trench coat though. So I wonder what kind of clothes he should wear though. loose. Let's maybe like give him kind of like skinny jeans kind of for his pants. But
Maybe,
but loose shirt.
maybe like a waiter type deal.
A waiter? I don't know. Maybe a butler or something. I mean, I could even see that working into a story where he's like posing as a server or something, while trying to run away from the bad guys, and so he disguises himself as like a maitre d' in an upscale joint while he's fleeing from them or something. Some spy movie stuff. And go with a kind of a loose t-shirt sort of deal, I think. Maybe it's kind of a little bit too small for him, but still loose. At least in the like, it's a little bit too short for him. He's like skinny but long. So his clothing, it's like maybe in this world a little hard for ferrets to find clothes that fit right, especially if he's like not a rich character. So having played with the ferret, which sounds really cute, but having played with the ferret design, I'm kind of like looking back at the rat I made, and there are things I can do that would help. Define the rat a little more and relate him back to what I did with the ferret. You know, kind of a profile. The rat should have maybe a very boxy head. And his face favors contemptible snarls. Like for him, his hatred of the hero is almost kind of personal. So for our hero here, when he's not in the cool shades, we can see his eyes. Remember how they handled Neo in the Matrix, like his vulnerability. We see a lot more of his vulnerability when he doesn't have his glasses on, when he doesn't have those cool shades on. But then, like, a lot of moments in the movie when he's like really in the zone, he has like those cool sunglasses on. So here's this kind of scruffy ferret who's kind of like, oh, fuck. Nervous energy of a character who's going to have to run for his life. And there's a lot of prey animal features that would go into this, like perking at the ears, flaring at the nostrils. It's looking more cat-like because I've perked at the ears like that. I'm gonna fix that. His ears are too long. Look more like a cat now. Oops. They need to be more rounded and short. Also, I can swipe something from Michiru. In BNA, her Michiru's kind of tanuki eye mask. Instead of like coming all over the face like that, the design for it is kind of comes down in her face a bit. So I could do that, but I don't think I will. I like the idea of like the bandit sort of look. So maybe there's something of a gentleman thief into this ferret. Even though the vibe I get from him is someone who's thrust into circumstances beyond his control, and he's not a bad guy. Or a thief by nature. Although he might exhibit some of that later.
Maybe the clothing could depend on a scene.
Well, yeah, obviously. We're just playing with this at this point. I mean, you can kind of invent stories as you go through character designs like this. Just maybe try some poses with him, because ferrets are fun to draw. I got a bunch of parkour stuff open near me, so just kind of vibe with that with some pictures of ferrets.
Kind of like you said that he might have, like you were thinking of what was it, a butler-ish idea with this story? Maybe when it's not in that part of the story, it's more loose, since he might have, like the idea of him stealing something. I can only imagine someone having more of a bit, right?
And here he is jumping for his life. So, like, here's the horizon line right here. This is almost kind of like a planning for a Sakuga animation or something. Bullets flying past him. It's kind of rat character.
And maybe make his neck fur like a little bit more spiked because
Scruffy?
he's scared of the gun, you know.
I kind of like that. Like that.
Like because
It wouldn't be like that all the time, but that's a nice note to make. Well, he's scared from the gun being pointed at him in the model sheet, but he wouldn't be like that all the time, obviously.
Oh yeah, but, I mean like the little hair on the neck, but maybe a little bit more like spiked because it's like no, I'm getting pointed with the gun.
I just did that. The stream will take a little bit to catch up, but I did a little bit of that. I can even do it more. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of fun to play with. This character that I've sort of developed just now, and this rat villain I actually could potentially use for an animation test of some kind. And if you want to do a fan art animation of these characters, feel free. Let's try this. This is a very parkour kind of thing I'm going to try here. I wonder if a hoodie would be nice, would be fun with him, actually. Sure, it's like going in tubes. Why not? Why not his clothing be a tube? Basically. I like the skinny jeans look for him. So I want to stick with that. He could potentially be barefoot. Oh, there's actually a character that's very similar to kind of this sort of thing, the mink character from BNA. It keeps getting called a weasel. Oh dear. No thanks, big titty fan art. I'll try off the screen this to make sure that this stuff is work safe appropriate first. Oh wow, yeah, good thing I screened this. I'm not seeing anything non-work safe, but there's some suggestive stuff here that I probably wouldn't want on stream. There's some very nice fan art of it, though. Marie Tommy, I think her name is, the character. But she's got kind of the flat head going on that ferrets and weasels have, and minks. She'd get mad at me for calling her a weasel. Alright, I think I've got enough that I can go through her. There's a mix of some good fan art and some other things of her that I found in Google image search just now. This one's more of a kind of a toony western fan art. I just really like this. There's a couple of this meme of the cat. Yeah, this her turning into a more realistic looking, almost devilman looking mink when she's pissed. And here's Mitchery looking a lot like Felix the cat right there. A basic model sheet, another that cat knife meme. Here's from the intro, showing up more of her design. There's some good basic shape. There's a character in a hoodie back there, how about that? But yeah, I mean, they kind of did do a little bit of... she does kind of like almost a sort of a... well, she's got a trench coat, which kind of fits with the tube that like a mink or a ferret would wear. And she got like that flat head going on of weasel family animals. It's way too tiny, but yeah, that kind of thing. Alright, so for this guy, it gives me some ideas to cue off of. I like the idea of this guy being kind of a kid who doesn't really deserve what he's or young adult that's gotten himself into circumstances beyond his control. Classic action hero kind of stuff. And the hoodie is interesting, although I might find some other outfits. But yeah, I mean, like, play with that further, add more lines to it. Maybe just throw his blue jeans in here, like a dark, faded color, maybe. Maybe like a green hoodie, just to try that out. And for fun, let's maybe, oh, no. Shoes could be like that, maybe. Or maybe his shoes match his upper, well, Shoes should maybe be dark. Like that. So maybe go with kind of a cream color, yellowish, for his fur. It's not really cream color, is it? Maybe pink. Or blue. We're pretty close to ending the session. So does anyone have any additional questions? If not, I'm going to assign the homework this week.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How do you know if your design isn't over, like, cluttered with design, like, with little details, and under cluttered or like under designed with like no detail at all? How do you find the balance?
Well, you gotta try it. You gotta test drive it. You gotta do test illustrations of it. If you're animating it, you gotta do test animations of it.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Oh, it's a little too saturated. But whatever. I'm not too concerned about it. I just wanted to throw up some stuff right here as an example.
Actually have
Sure.
Your tablet, like, could you show us like maybe like what type of sensitivity controls and like opacity and stuff like that you need when you're drawing for animation?
Hard to say, but I would say you should try to find what your sweet spot is, but I mean, it's different for every person because we all have different hands. But I would say try to favor stuff that's going to give you a very light touch, so that you don't have to press very hard to get, like, I'm like barely touching the canvas right now when I do this stuff, and this is what happens when I press on this particular brush, just because I've increased the size on it. Like this is me like barely even pressing it when I get like the really dark stuff. Like I don't have to like grind down into the paper for it. The other thing is that there's a lot of drawing you can do, and I'm actually trying to get into the habit of it more, or use something like a millipen that has like minimal or almost or no thickness to thick to thin on it. Because then you can use that to describe 3D shapes. Either with like this kind of loose gestural thing I'm doing with the continuous line thing, or you might see people who draw sort of the way that Ethan Becker do using this approach, or people like Eli Valley. Eli Valley sketches. No. Robert Valley. Eli Valley is a political cartoonist. Robert Valley is this guy. Sketches. Whoop, that is a tit. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to blunk that out. When I upload it to YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, Robert Valley's drawings are a good thing to look at for what I'm talking about. Let me see if I could find some work-safe examples. I'm not sure if this is the best example, but there is a little bit of that going on in the undersketch of the inks. Here's a pretty good example. Like it looks like he did that with a Micron pen. It's a mix of different materials, but he kind of does a lot of sketching with a really thin pencil, mechanical pencil usually. And that is a tool I want to make more use of in the future. I mostly, when I draw here, I try to find something that feels like an animation pencil, like an animator grease pencil. Let me show you. So there's those color erase pencils. Those are not what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Disney. You'll see Glenn Keane using them. Glenn Keane. Let me see if I can find a photo of him actually using it. I think he's using one there. That's a painting. There he is, just vibing back there in like the 90s on Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, they'd use like maquettes like this to kind of work out the dimensionality of the characters and stuff. This is a staged photo, obviously, but I mean, this is not unlike what he would do. You can see that he's got another pencil down there, this well-used light table that's probably been around there since the 50s. And there's a grease pencil right there that he's using for roughing in Aladdin. It's got a, no, I think that's actually a charcoal stick, but they'll also use grease pencils too. But yeah, it's a sanding pad for the charcoal stick he's using.
I don't know if this is 100% relative, but what's a grease pencil? Or I'm sorry, whatever you said.
Well, you can look it up. There's specific types of grease pencils that were really popular among animators at Disney, which a lot of them, they don't make them anymore. I had the good fortune to actually try them out when I was in school, because there were some Disney animators that were teaching the classes at my school who worked on like Disney feature films, and so they had some of the leftover pencils, and I got to mess with them. Let's see here. The equivalent of that these days would probably be here. Let's see, grease pencil blick. I haven't worked in traditional animation for a while, so I'd need to kind of shop around and talk to other traditional animators about what tools they recommend these days. But you might see stuff along these lines. This is a cheapo Sharpie China marker. You probably will see stuff like that, but really, like, the stuff that you would mainly want for doing animation would be grease pencils that are erasable. Like, and there's the color erase pencils. Specifically the Prismacolor Color Erase, I believe, or these. Yeah, these are Prismacolor Color Erase. You buy them by the color instead of I wouldn't buy the variety pack. I would try to get them individually and get them cheap and get them color coded. Usually like red, green, blue, and maybe a couple other colors. So you can. The reason why you get different colors is so you can differentiate different cells of animation through drawing through the light table, or so you can pick out shapes when you're doing an extra drawing on top of something or trying to differentiate something. But this is the kinds of drawings that you'd see done with like a I don't know if this one was done with a grease pencil. This one looks like it was done with a what's it called? Pastel, possibly? No, pastel would be too smeary. I'd love to find out what this is done, but I think it was done. I think this might have been done with the same kind of tools that layout artists use. Ooh, that's fun. Look at that. Yeah, looking at Glenn Keane's rough drawings is a great way to kind of get energy, get a better sense of energy and vitality and stuff. I definitely want to lean more into studying him in the future. That's an excellent drawing. I wish I could find a example of that wasn't photographed at a weird angle. So it's like flat on. Oh, that's cute. You can see how rough and loose and gestural Glenn Keane would do stuff, even as far back as like Fox and the Hound. This figure drawing there. Oh, there's nudes. Sorry, gotta get away from that. I really gotta screen this stuff a little bit better. Yeah. All right. So with that in mind, I'm going to maybe do a quick, see if I can get a grease pencil look and feel here to kind of rough it in. So there's a design pencil here. Curious to how that handles. There's pastels, chalk. If one of them feels like kind of like a, here's a charcoal. No. No. Rough pencil, that might work. Maybe. Taper pencil. I think one of the India inks might work. Light running ink. Yeah, that's the one, I think. And I shrink it. So let's see. So you use like really gestural sketches where you really push the shapes and push the flow, the pose and stuff. Oh, dang, that doesn't really quite work, does it? It's something that's a little bit more toothy. I want to. Whoops. Nope. Nope. Let's try a real pencil and see what happens with it. Oh no, no. Design pencil seems more like the likely candidate for getting the effect I want here. So let's do a once over on this guy right here to try to kind of push him a bit, and then I'll call it an evening. Does anyone have any additional questions? Cool.
Small thing, but are all the brushes you use basically just modified base brushes on Clip?
Yeah, because I'm still getting used to Clip. I'm still learning what brushes feel good for me. I did have a Photoshop brush that felt pretty like an animation grease pencil, and there's a few that kind of feel like one here. I'm still kind of getting the sense of these.
Why would you make a video on the matter claiming these allegations?
Because
What the hell?
That sounds.
A little strange.
It sounds like they muted themselves at least.
Okay. Finishing out the evening vibing a little bit with Glen Keane is not necessarily a bad thing. Even if I'm not going that far into it. Just give me an idea of like maybe I could use something like that. Then let's maybe try this. Oops. Sort of ripping off the double contrast thing from being a little bit, just in this kind of rough, quick thumbnail-y sketch of the colors anyway. Oops. There's that and that and that. Let's combine these, merge select layers. I actually kind of like him with red pants. So I'm just using the hue slider to kind of play with the colors a little bit. Maybe desaturate that a little bit. Darken him in so his highlights stand out. It's kind of neat. And then as one final touch, I'll just throw in maybe some shadows here. Oops. So I'm not even concerned about drawing quality here because the idea is just to I can like pull back and squint from this and like kind of visualize how this would look as a finished drawing. Just to try out some colors or shapes or other things.
It gives some like DNA vibes.
Yeah, I'm going for that. They like to use the synthwave kind of color combo of the teal and pink on shading a lot, shading and lighting. And there's a film directed by some friends of mine that has some BNA-ish things going on. BNA, I think, synthwave stuff going on there. Let's see here. It's this film. I don't know if I'll get copyright stricken for playing the audio in this, so I'm not going to risk it, but this is Night Runner Magnum Bullets. And this was by the Knights of the Light Table, which are a few friends of mine. They also did this down here. They also directed this down here, the Starlight Brigade video. Yeah, I'm not up to the level I would need to be to animate for them, and I'm working on getting there because at some point I'd love to work on something with them. But I mean, they're pretty strict about the level of quality for the people they bring on their projects. So
that was a really nice transition.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna keep struggling and trying to improve and eventually get a good pace going where I'm outputting awesome stuff. I mean, that's the goal. That's why I've been doing these classes and stuff, like so that I can work towards making stuff like this and collaborating with other people at the level of quality I need to be at, helping make stuff like this. Yeah, thank you all for coming. I'm going to wrap it up here. Oh, the homework. Oh, the homework is, well, explore your character. Well, here, I better write it down, actually. Oh, why is it doing that?
too late to ask a question?
No, it's not.
I wanted to ask, how to use like blacks when creating characters, like when to use like hard black or soft blacks, like and like what they convey.
All I'm doing with those at this stage is just trying to pick out shapes. Sometimes I'll add in areas of shadow or something. Often I'll do things, I'll try to emphasize areas where I want attention to be. So I'll add something darker in there. But I mean, these are just tools of trying to work out and try to make sense of what you're putting down on the page as you kind of evolve it. Eventually, I mean, the goal is eventually you're going to have a clear, clean drawing with the design guts that you've kind of worked out, not necessarily included, but I mean, you just use them as tools. If you're doing final inks, that becomes an inking thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Seb, I couldn't make it for the whole class. Is this class going to be on your Twitch channel later, or?
It's going to be on my YouTube. It'll be automatically on my Twitch, but it's going to be uploaded to YouTube later too.
Okay.
Sorry, the typing is lagging. I maybe should have done this in an actual typing program instead of a drawing program. Yeah, let me finish typing here. Oof. So much lag in this. Let me see if shrinking that helps. really lagging. Okay, let's see. I'll read it out while it's lagging to put the text on screen. Practice from existing character design model sheets and animation and other things. Try to break down the shapes and understand the characters. One second. Try to break down the shapes and understand the characters. And understand the characters. Okay. Play with your own and number 2 is play with your own characters using contrasting ideas of personality and body shape. Vary the shapes and try different approaches with the characters. Try the duo, trio, or quadro rule. It doesn't necessarily have to be limited to that, by the way. Cowboy Bebop, for example, the characters, there's 5 main cast characters in that show, and all 5 of them were inspired in personality by Super Sentai Power Rangers, basically, for how their personalities were distinct from each other. In that 5, that also included the little dog character too.
What's the duo, trio, and quadro rule?
2 duo characters that are contrasted to each other, trio of characters that are contrasted to each other, but kind of on a floating range of like a triangle between each other. And the quadro rule, which is usually there's one central character around which the others sort of revolve or like are based. But you can play with it. You can play with like different rule sets. That YouTuber I posted earlier actually describes some of those rule sets in his videos. Like if you watch a lot of his videos, you'll pick up on some little tricks and different approaches for thinking about the storytelling or the visual language of the characters. So I would watch him. Brett Eggleston is his name, I think. Yeah, I posted him much earlier in the chat. If someone could relink him for me, I'd appreciate it. Because I don't have the link handy. Oh, here it is. Here, I'll link it. Yeah, this guy talks about a lot of that kind of stuff. You're not going to pick up... This is all stuff for you to play with, by the way. Like, these are not hard and fast rules. I just want people to play with stuff. Look at some more stuff like Brooks Eggleston, and other things that might be inspiring, other character designers. And just kind of vibe with it and play with it, because I mean, like, part of the point of character design is to play with storytelling and imagination and shape and design. And to kind of like invent and have fun. Well, the character turnaround, of course, should just be rough. Like, I don't want you to blow a gasket doing them. In the future, I'm going to actually be going over like turnarounds for like really serious anatomical stuff in the figure drawing class, and that'll also be connected to something that's a much more in-depth turnaround. What we do here, but I want people to start kind of playing with like lining up the lines, seeing how shapes of their characters that they've designed turn in space, and it's due next week. But you're not being graded on any of these. You can do as much or as little or none of the homework if you want to. This is just pretext. This is just like pretext for people to take on doing this stuff. Feel free to play with it however you want and try things on your own that might deviate away from this if you think you get some value out of it. I would also say you can also add like try expression sheets, lineups, and other things you see in existing character design stuff. Let's wait for that to catch up to the lag. And then we'll end the stream. Wow, we went actually quite a bit over. That was over 3 hours. That was well over 3 hours today. That was almost like close to 3.5 hours total. Oh yeah, and somebody posted a GIF of Bravest Warrior characters in chat. I would say that really basic character designs is a good idea to aim for when you're starting to get used to this kinds of stuff. And Bravest Warriors has some examples of some really simple character designs. OKKO also has that too. Bravest Warriors and Adventure Time and stuff, and even OKKO is kind of like evolved Rubber Hose characters.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by 1 to 3 pages?
1 to 3 pages, like fill up a page of stuff. Roughly about how big a single page would be.
Okay.
Like however big or small that page is up to you. Just whatever you think would be a fair amount. A fair amount of effort on your part. Anyway, I added an additional line here. Try expression sheets, lineups, and other things you see in existing character design stuff. Play with it and have fun. I'm going to screenshot this real quick so I can repost it later. And we will wrap up. Shapes for anatomy? You don't really. I mean, anatomy is something you put on top of really simple shapes. But I mean, that's a figure drawing question. That's not necessarily outside the scope of this class, but we're kind of out of time right now. Otherwise, I'd be happy to do a demo. But a good person to look into, who's actually got great tutorials up on. Let me see here. So, New Masters Academy is actually doing a 3-month $25 deal for the subscriptions to access their streaming art tutorial stuff. And Steve Houston's lectures there actually break down really excellently how you should approach shapes for constructing figures, like basic shapes and stuff. And they are the main person who I started with in my figure drawing stuff, for how I'm trying to approach how I break down the shapes I draw and stuff. So if you go to the New Masters Academy website right now, you can take advantage of their 4th of July sale deal to. Let's see here. Here's the New Masters Academy site. They do have a free trial also. We have to be careful because there might be art nudes on here. But there is a 4th of July sale going on right now. Let me see if I can find. I think it'd be in one of the resources tabs here. Oh yeah, under the art resource tab earlier today I posted it. There it is. the art resource tab in under art. And here's the page. I'll repost it in chat and Discord, but this is the deal page for New Masters Academy. I would strongly recommend checking out Steve Houston's figure drawing courses on there. Figure drawing fundamentals courses. And they will get you on the right feet of learning how to break down the shapes of a human figure. And that, of course, applies also to animation and character design. They also offer like mentor study programs and stuff, which are considerably more expensive. But when you subscribe to the site, they have like a tutorial video subscription stuff you can do, and you can do the homework of. If you follow the homework in those classes and stuff, you'll be basically doing what I'm trying to do in my figure drawing class right now. Because I'm sourcing stuff like him and New Masters Academy things and other things that I'm studying and trying to regurgitate to people here, so I can learn it, and hopefully they can get a taste of what they need to be doing as they start learning and growing and or dipping their toes in art for the first time. Anyway, so we're gonna wrap this up here. I might stick around and answer a couple questions of voice after the stream actually ends, but I'm gonna wrap it up here because I'm losing my voice a little bit. Share here. We got the Japanese version this time.